Wow. Okay. And this one says, not this story, not not my story, but my dad's. Fun fact, my dad also grew up a few miles from Roswell, New Mexico. Well, that's an interesting fun fact. My dad was working for the New Mexico Department of Game and Fish. One of his duties was to scrape the moss off the sides of a ditch every few weeks. The ditch was on the middle of a field and in the middle of nowhere. My dad looked up and saw a silver sphere. He quickly got up and told his coworker, who also saw it. By the time my dad looked back, the sphere started to rise and get smaller as it gained distance from the ground. They watched it for like 5 minutes until it disappeared out of sight. I guess about 20 minutes later, 2 fighter jets from the Air Force Base a couple hours away flew over. He also has a lot more stories, and I wouldn't mind posting if anyone's interested. Another fun fact, my dad now works at Roswell International Air Center, which is the base where they took the alien ship in 1947, and they allegedly did the alien autopsy. He regularly goes into the hangar. The Air Force took the wreckage too. I bet he does. I'm totally sure that he does that regularly. Okay, I get the next one. When I was younger, I believed that I saw a UFO. Now, when I say that, I mean an unidentified flying object. And I am so glad they cleared that up before I read the whole story. So we know what an unidentified flying object is. I was pretty young, about 5 or 6, and was walking outside with my grandma. It was nighttime, and where she lived, there were not too many lights, so the night sky was amazing. Seeing as I was simply mesmerized by the night sky, I decided to keep looking up while we were walking. While I was looking up, I saw something that looked like a star simply zoom around very quickly. The light it was emitting was white, and it was about the same size as a star, so I figured that it was pretty high up in the sky. Anyway, I'm staring up at the sky, and I see this star-like light zooming around a small area, and then it simply disappeared. This all happened in a couple of seconds. This scene replays in my head over and over whenever I walk around at night. I try to recreate it by walking and staring straight up, even jerking my head around, but to no avail. I've seen shooting stars, and it didn't look anything like that. I try to debunk it every chance I get, but it's just not the same. Yeah, that doesn't sound that spectacular. I mean, honestly, it just sounds like there were a few mysterious little lights. Not a very exciting story. Anyway, so I usually show up too late to these threads, starts the next story, and I spend an inordinate amount of time recounting my experience. So here it is, cut and pasted from a thread 2 days ago. My friend and I, both early 20s, meet up for the usual summer night, rolling around backwards slowly and smoking pot. The usual route was 1 mile country block consisting mostly of 2-track dirt roads. We're just idling along in first gear, smoking a fatty and talking. The first half of the cruise was uneventful. We saw a few deer, of course, plentiful meteor action going on skyward. We had just turned back onto my road when a light suddenly appears in the north. It was smaller than the sun, but still a definite round shape. It was a much deeper, richer orange that seemed to glow rather than emit light in the way that a light bulb does. In conversation, I've compared it to lava, even though I've never seen lava in person. I've only seen it in Minecraft. We ease the car to a stop and start talking excitedly about what it could have been. Before we manage to have much of a conversation, the same light suddenly flicks on in the sky to the south of us. This time, it's much closer. No more than a few hundred feet above the trees and no more than 1,000 yards from where we sat in neutral. 2 more lights accompany it, forming a triangle. The triangle begins to rotate in sort of a gentle weeble-wobble that reminded me of a spirograph, very deliberate in its movement. All the while the lights were changing colors and flashing at somewhat random intervals. As a kid, I'd read a lot about UFOs, and I always remember the alleged abductees talking about losing time. I still remember checking the clock to see that it was 10:24. The joint lay forgotten, burning a hole in my friend's car seat. Oops. The light show went on for probably a solid minute. The creepiest part was that it seemed to be directed at my friend and I, as there were no other cars on the road, and the residents of the few nearby houses had long since retired for the night. It was almost confirmed when my friend suddenly snapped out of his trance and said, "What am I doing? I have a camera." He grabbed for the camera. By the time he got the lens cap off, the lights were off too. All that remained was one tiny light, and that was almost identical to a star. The star did a quick loop-de-loop and disappeared silently into the night sky. Now the only sound that could be heard was the usual chorus of frogs and insects and the faint hum of cars in the distance. The next day at work, I was telling the story to my coworkers when our boss pulls up in his truck. He's a real hard ass and immediately asks what's so important that I'm postponing work for story time. I offhandedly say something like, "Oh, I was just telling the guys about the strange lights I saw over the fields last night." He stops dead in his tracks and looks at me. "What time?" he asks, suddenly not caring that we're not getting anything done. I look at him, not sure if he's serious or if he's about to deliver the ultimate burn. About 10:30. He proceeds to lean up against the shovel and tell the same story I just told. His son had a bad dream and woke him up. My boss saw it out the window and even picked his son up to watch. To this day, telling this story or even thinking about it gives me the worst goosebumps and makes my eyes tear uncontrollably. This was not me, but my mother when I was young. I lived in Minnesota at the time. It was up north from the Twin Cities, and my mom worked in a nursing home behind where we lived. She was a licensed practical nurse. To get to work, she had to take all these back roads through the woods. She worked until about 9 p.m. most days. One night, she comes home blazing up the driveway in her car. She's in a total panic, and my dad is trying to calm her down, and she starts screaming about a UFO. She said that she had been on the road that she always drove, and she came around a corner that had a small valley beneath it and had power lines running across it. Above the power lines, she said there was a UFO, like out of a movie with lights and everything. Totally silent, and it was hovering. She stopped her car in shock and stared for a minute and then realized what she was doing and lit back home like a bat out of hell. At this point, she rakes the curtains open, and on the back window of the house is a very large window opening to very dark woods. My brother made a cat thing out of paper at school with legs that were folded, so they sort of sprang out at you. When she opened the curtains, the legs went all squiggly and she screamed. She jumped back and fell back over. My dad drove out to look, but it was gone. The next night she saw it again, but never again after. Odd things happened during that period, but I don't have time to write more. Ever since I was a kid, I believed in UFOs, and I was fascinated with the subject, but having my own sightings cemented my belief. It was somewhere between 8:30 and 9 p.m. I was sitting in my bedroom watching a movie on DVD. My bedroom has two windows, one facing south and the other facing east. I was sitting beside the window facing south. Both of them were wide open because I have no air conditioning. If you look outside my south window, you will see the roof of the house next door, a one-story house. Our house is 2 stories. Beyond that are the treetops and naturally the sky. I'm really getting a word picture for this place. It was a cloudy evening, which blocked out the stars and the moon, assuming there was a moon out that night. During the movie, I just happened to glance out the window when all of a sudden, from beyond the treetops, a diamond-shaped craft came flying in a north-northeast direction towards me and my house. This craft was lit up with an orange glow around the edges and a bright white in the middle. It moved at an incredible speed without making a sound. Not one sound was made by it. It took no more than a couple of seconds to come out from beyond the treetops, across the sky, underneath the clouds, towards me and to over the roof of my house and out of my sight. I've seen airplanes and helicopters fly at various altitudes over my neighborhood, and none of them moved anywhere as fast as the UFO did, much less without making a sound, with the exception of a few airplanes who flew at a high enough altitude to be out of earshot as a result. Not in the entire time I've lived here do I ever recollect any aircraft coming from that direction, from over those treetops down south. There are no airports, no landing strips, no military bases, no chopper pads south of me. Just the usual houses, malls, and the ocean. Okay. And now for one that's a little bit different again. There are many from thousands of years of Chinese records. For example, the drawing of the fireball in the sky. This mass sighting happened in the city of Nanjing in 1892. At the time, no modern rocket or aircraft had been made by man, and this fireball was not an asteroid, nor was it a hot air balloon as stated in the description. The record also says that the fireball made very little sound. One other interesting case may be the identical flying trips. One record from 1792 said that two men carried a grandpa and took him to the Shandong province from north to south in the air. The other record is quite modern, called Wang Yankui incident, which has a documentary about it. In 1977, Wang Yankui, a farmer, was taken by two men in his dreams. In his dreams, that's an important modifier there. Traveled from Hebei to Nanjing. After he went back, those two men took him from Hebei to Shanghai months later. At the time, he traveled 9 cities throughout China in the air, carried by two men on the shoulder. This incident has records of the person's own account, telegrams from destinations to his village, and military logs. It also has the drawings of the two mysterious men based on witness descriptions. So, those are all the UFO stories we have for right now. It's been very interesting. Have you ever seen a UFO, and do you believe in any of these? Let us know in the comments, and yeah, if you could like and subscribe, that would totally help me out right now. Thanks a lot. Bye.